Well, I've been saying it. Disney Star Wars, the Acolyte by Leslye Headland has been canceled. It's getting the Willow treatment, okay? Yes. The show that Leslye Headland say is the gayest Star Wars show in Star Wars history, Disney Star Wars The Acolyte, is now canceled. So, welcome back to Views with Hughes, your gender-free news. This is Jerome Hughes. Now, let's go ahead and get right into this story. Now, today, this is some late major news that shouldn't surprise anyone who's been paying attention to. Disney Star Wars The Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy has officially been canceled. This is coming in from Deadline, all right? Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, it's just the way things go on TV shows sometimes, but this cancellation is different. It's not about ratings nor budgets. Nuh-uh. This is about how a once great franchise has been completely hijacked by woke ideologues like Leslye Headland and Kathleen Kennedy, who don't have a clue about what made Star Wars special in the first place. Now, we're going to go ahead and dive deep into the details, so be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And also, you know what? It all comes down to people in charge, people like Leslye Headland, who thought they could just remake Star Wars in her image, and the process destroyed everything everything that made it great. Now, remember the days when Star Wars was about hope, adventure, and the classic battle between good and evil? Well, George Lucas gave us the universe filled with timeless characters and stories, yes, the good stories that resonated with audiences across the generations. Star Wars was a cultural phenomenon because Star Wars was relatable. Star Wars was about family, redemption, and fighting for what's right. But actually, over the years, especially after Disney took over, that magic started to fade. Instead of building what George Lucas created, they started tearing it apart. And it wasn't just the new characters or the storylines, it was the very essence of what Star Wars represented. Now, Star Wars The Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy was supposed to be something different, deep dive into the dark side or the Sith of the Force, set in a time that, like I said, it was a high republic that everyone hated. And on paper, Star Wars The Acolyte by Leslye Headland and Kathleen Kennedy could have been, an interesting addition to Star Wars universe. But when you put someone like Leslye Headland at the helm, someone who openly admits that not being a big fan of the original movies and stuff, you're setting yourself up for a failure. And in that interview, Leslye Headland admitted that this was the gayest Star Wars show ever. And Leslye Headland made it clear from the start that she wasn't interested in following the blueprint George Lucas laid out. Now, Leslye Headland wanted to bring in her own vision, which, let's be honest, that was just code for pushing woke ideology into the Star Wars universe. And what do we get? Star Wars The Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy that completely disregarded the core principles of Star Wars in favor of political woke messaging and agenda-driven storytelling. And you know what? Instead of delivering on the rich lore and compelling characters that fans come to love to expect, Star Wars The Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy was filled with hollow narratives, underdeveloped characters, flat characters, and blatant disregard for the very fans, the Star Wars fans, who made Star Wars the juggernaut that it is today. Now, fans also tuned in to Escape from a Galaxy Far, Far Away, not to get lectured on social justice or identity politics. And it didn't take long for fans to voice their discontent. Now, from the very first episode it was clear that Star Wars The Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy was not what people wanted. The ratings for Star Wars The Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy were abysmal, and the reviews were harsh as well, okay? And the fan backlash was intense. But rather than just listening to the fans, the people who actually care about Star Wars, the creators doubled down on their, failed vision for Star Wars. This includes Leslye Headland and Leslye Headland and Kathleen Kennedy. And you know what? Leslye Headland and her team were more interested in promoting their agenda than delivering a quality Star Wars experience. And that's why, Star Wars The Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy failed. Now, the fans rejected it because it wasn't Star Wars. It was just a cheap imitation wrapped in woke packaging. Now, Disney has finally pulled the plug. And honestly, it's about time. This cancellation is a wake-up call to the folks at Lucasfilm and Disney that you can't just slap Star Wars name on something and expect people to love it. You got to respect the source material, the fans, and the legacy that George Lucas built. Okay? So what can we learn from this? First and foremost, The people in charge of Star Wars need to remember that what made it great in the first place. They need to stop hiring creators like Leslye Headland, who openly disdain the original trilogy, and instead bringing people who understand and appreciate George Lucas's vision. Secondly, with Star Wars, the Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy, they need to stop pushing political agendas into these stories. Star Wars has always been about good storytelling, compelling characters, and epic battles between good and evil, like I've said before. And that's what fans want, and that's what the fans deserve. And lastly, this is a message to all the woke creators out there like Leslye Headland, out there who think they can take a beloved franchise and mold it into their own image. The fans is not going to stand for it. You know, we want Star Wars, not your personal soapbox. And if you want to deliver on that, then step aside and let someone else take the reins, okay? But the cancellation of Star Wars, the Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy is a sign that maybe, just maybe, things could change for the better. But it's going to take a lot more than just canceling one bad show like this. Star Wars, the Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy. Lucasfilm needs to course correct and get back to the basics. They need to go ahead and bring in creators who actually care about Star Wars and who are willing to put the Star Wars fans first. All right. But until then, we'll keep calling out these failures and holding them accountable, because that's what true Star Wars fans do. Now, we love this franchise of Star Wars and we want to see it thrive, but it won't be as long as people like Leslye Headland and Kathleen Kennedy are running the show. But let's keep this conversation going in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts about this in below. But also, another thing I'd like to point out. Think back to the Star Wars celebration where Kathleen Kennedy first announced Disney Star Wars, the Acolyte by Leslye Headland. Okay, they put it like there was then at that time. They all put it like they're out there like it has a big political agenda. You know how it has like more females in the cast, how more female Jedi. And it's like they wanted to be known that, you know, they're activists instead of actors. That's how they are. You know, and quite frankly, you know, with this Star Wars, the Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy, it was no surprise, because the simple fact of the matter is this is what we got, you know, and when you go woke, you go broke. Simple as that. But apparently they assume that if you go ahead and slap the name Star Wars on something, then everyone's going to love what Leslye Headland and Kathleen Kennedy created. But no, Star Wars, the Acolyte has been canceled. Star Wars, the Acolyte canceled. I told you all this would happen. It was going to get the Willow treatment. It should get the Willow treatment, and then it got the Willow treatment. Okay. And there's a lot of people out there rejoicing right now. Okay. Now, I'm not celebrating this because it's been, you know, long expected of me to see this actually happen. But at the same time, I mean, this is something that they should have just known wasn't going to work at all. And it's a shame that they actually thought that Disney Star Wars, the Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy was something that's going to work. So let's go ahead and keep this conversation going in the comments below. What do you think about the Star Wars, the Acolyte by Leslye Headland under Kathleen Kennedy getting canceled? And what do you want to see from Star Wars in the future? Do you think it can be recovered, or do you think it's dead right now? What do you think about Skeleton Crew by Jon Favreau? That's coming up soon. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments below. Also, be sure to include any additional thoughts you might have this particular topic. If you enjoyed what I said in this video, go ahead and smash the like button and share far wide across social media. And if you haven't done so already and you enjoyed all the content that I put out there, go ahead, subscribe to the channel. Click the bell notification. It's free. So that way you notify future uploads and updates. Till then, peace.